So first on the list, we have one of our very distinguished panelists for the second panel at Edtech Summit 3.0. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please put our hands together for Ruby Igwe? Round of applause for Ruby. A better round of applause for our
regional director.
Up next, we also have our next panelist for the second panel session. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please put our hands together for Kelechi Uchenna? A round of applause for Kelechi Uchenna. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, up next, I would like to bring up stage our next panelist for this very important conversation. Can we please put our hands together for Boye Oshinaga? A round of applause for him. All right, to moderate this very powerful conversation is a very beautiful and intelligent moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome upstage our moderator for this panel session, Precious Adeshinola. A round of applause for Precious.
Ruby, you, Bayo, and of course, Kelechi. So we're going to be starting with the lady first, of course. At my far left is Ruby. I'm just going to go straight into it. I'm sure you guys have already heard about the great things that these people are doing. Don't let your helper pass you by today. If you want to connect, just go and block them outside this door. Immediately we are done. Okay, so Ruby, straight into it. You scaled ALX in Nigeria into a top-performing hub training hundreds of thousands. And you've also built partnerships with governments and global institutions. What actually breaks when an African edtech tries to cross from one market into the next? I think this is one question that a lot of people here will need answers to.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Precious. I think that I'm hoping that I can be heard. I think that something that breaks immediately you try to move beyond borders is everything you've done before. It's really easy to stand on protocols that you've already delivered, systems you've built, and things you've done. There's that discipline. But once you start to move into a new market with new regulators, new partners, new customers, new clients, if you're going with the same old, that is going to break. There's a reason why you need to do market research, you need to do landscaping, you need to do quite a bit of work to understand that every market you're moving into is unique and comes with a unique set of problems that you need to try to solve for even before you go there. Which is why when you're going in, you try to break your entry through different methods that I'm sure we'll be talking about as we proceed. But yes, a lot of things do change because you're not working with the original market that you went into before.
Thank you very much. I think that one of the things that stood out for me when you were speaking is the fact that we have to see it from the market perspectives. Like even other sectors, we find people wanting to come into a market with a system that has scaled maybe in another market and they get burnt, coming in. So thank you very much for that. I'm just going to go straight to Kelechi, right? So Kelechi, Nigenius. Let's talk about it. Nigenius already operates beyond Nigeria, home tutoring and the likes of that. Which of these best cross-border locations, 28 schools across 3 cities, RoboLearn, needs reworking? So what I'm trying to ask is, what needs reworking in different markets based on the experience you've gotten with, doing the work of Nigenius in some of these places?
Thank you so much, everyone, and I'm happy to be here, and I love the conversations. So at Nigenius, we do tutoring events, we do coding and robotics for schools. We have a gamified robotics platform called RoboLearn, and we also host Africa's biggest inter-school robotics competition. But based on your question, I think the 2 biggest products that can scale across borders is tutoring and RoboLearn Digital, right? And here's why. For tutoring is already a global market, right? Parents need tutors everywhere, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Canada, so it's easy for that to be a cross-border product or service, right? However, I'll talk about the challenge list, particularly when we try to cross Ghana. We serve diaspora parents in Canada, America, that's African diaspora parents, Canada, America, the UK. But when we tried to cross Ghana, we got Ghanaian teachers, but Ghanaian parents were like, why are you Nigerian telling me about tutoring in Ghana, right? What's the connection? You understand? So I think trust is a major challenge. Number 2 is having boots on the ground. Companies trust you when you want to scale when they have a Nigerian staff that is a Ghanaian or an ALX staff that's a Ghanaian. So first of all, you need that gunpowder to be able to put somebody on the ground, right? So that was a major challenge for us, trust and being able to have somebody on ground in Ghana, right, to deploy. Then secondly, why I say RoboLearn Digital is, this is a digital platform, right? It's still early days for us, but this is a platform where people can sign up wherever they are. And there's no physical onboarding, right? You just click, sign up, put your country code, and register, and start learning, right? Payment is not a challenge because most of our payment platforms now can do cross-border transactions. So, so those two, tutoring, once we're able to close that trust gap and be able to have boots on the ground, can enter 5 African countries like today. RoboLearn digital product, sign up and start learning in your local language, or your kids start learning. You don't need to really interface with anybody. People will trust the product, and we don't necessarily need to hear from a Nigerian person in Tanzania, but they will trust the product. So for us, those are the 2 key areas that we know that we can expand Africa-wide. Yeah.
Fantastic. So if I heard you clearly, tutoring and robo-learning. You talked about boots on ground and the trust that needs to be built for the people in these other regions to trust you. I'm just going to stay on that with you and then ask you about what you think scaling would mean, right? So global partnerships often mean an African startup becomes a feature inside someone else's platform. How do you partner globally without being swallowed? Yeah.
Good question. So just to do a final recap on that, I was supposed to have talked about the solutions. I didn't talk about the solutions. To enable cross-border scale, one thing that I know needs to happen, particularly in our region, is there has to be cheaper cross-border transportation. So if I'm taking my team now, myself, Tolu, and Jane, to Ghana to go and maybe say market for like 2 days, we're looking at hotels, we're looking at flights, we're looking at exchange rates, a lot of money, right? So that's another challenge. So cross-border and also partnerships, cross-border partnerships. I'm talking to another Edtech in Ghana. We should welcome that thing and say, let's work with these Nigerians and see whether we can scale more with them. We tried to do that with some companies on ground, but they were like, so that's about the cross-border partnership. In terms of being a feature inside somebody's platform, like I said, if I'm on your platform and you're giving me 5,000 sign-ups every day, I don't mind if I'm a button. As long as people are clicking that button, they're making transactions, and I'm getting the active users that I need, I don't mind, right? Because a partnership is not an acquisition. A partnership is, we're partnering, and partnerships must be mutually beneficial. So if you come to me and say, okay, let's partner with Nigerians, okay, what's in it for me and what's in it for you? Do you get? So if you're going to put me on your side menu and you click, and people go out, and that button, 50,000 people are going to go there in one week, and I can convert at least 10,000 of them. I don't mind being, swallow me please, because I will survive, right? And I'll be able to generate revenue, right? And a partnership, like I said, is a partnership. It is not an acquisition. I will still be growing my business because I'm still running Nigerians, just that I have a button on Gradely, or I have a button on ALX or Hardy Business School, and I'm doing my thing. So let's look at partnerships with a different eye. Nobody's swallowing you, do you get? Except it's an acquisition, and that's a different ball game.
Thank you very much. In fact, I think that you nailed it, because even when Godwin was speaking, he talked about, as Africans, we needed to be very clear on what works for us. And I think that one of the things that have sustained, tech businesses in Africa, Edtech and all the other ones, is leveraging partnerships. So yes, we shouldn't be afraid of getting swallowed. We should collaborate more. So I'm just going to go into the money question, straight to Boye. Boye, you've raised funding, sat on the VC side at Founders Factory and built Gradely to 200,000 plus families. I used to use Gradely at some point, my kids. From both sides of the table, why does African Edtech struggle to raise? And is the problem the founders or the funders? We are putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a very, very critical question. And it's a question because Gradely is my second company. So Gradely combines AI and human tutors to accelerate outcomes for kids in K-12. And in my previous startup, it was funded. In Gradely, it was funded. So my template, in fact, before my previous startup, straight out of school, I was one of the first people in my entire school at the time, or at least my set, because everyone has raised money, but to get some money and come to Lagos and funding. So I've kind of been dealing with investors for a long time. And I think that the real challenge with funding EdTech is a market problem. So it's not really about, it's not the funder, it's the market. And in fact, many people have any clear narrative about how big the opportunity is. And in some cases, they cannot. It's not that. It's not because it's not for lack of trying, right? But there's no narrative. Like in India, we saw the successes in India, right? Where you could easily build a narrative that if I go outside of Delhi and go to smaller towns, I could get 100 million users. I think in Byju's, when Byju was at its height, 4 million subscribers, right? 4 million subscribers, and that was 5% of the entire
market.
Yeah, so when you want to build a case in Nigeria, immediately the 120 million population breaks apart. It ends up, I think when we were doing our estimation, when we started Greatly, we said 4 million African parents. But I even think that number dipped in terms of middle class parents. I think that number has even dipped. And if you think about maybe the whole of Lekki is 4 million. So you're literally saying, small pockets everywhere. So I think the real challenge is the market, and you need to be able to pull together a story about what the market can be. And I think, for example, people like ALX and ALU have done that to say the market is not one country, it's the entire continent, and this is how we're going to do it. So you need to pull that story together. And I think that's where the funding question breaks down. So it's like, I need money, but I need the money that you need $100,000. I need it to become $1 million in 7 years or 5 years. And how you're able to show me a very natural line with some examples, that's what really makes it difficult.
Sort of like a backward integration to what the outcome will be at the end of the day. I'm going to stay on that. Conversation. Border opportunity selling African Edtech or selling African built products to non.
Hello.
I think the mics are.
Yeah? It'll pick up, yeah? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think I've seen we're in tutoring together and tutoring business, and we're in diaspora together. So I think the thing with diaspora is like, I feel that the market for African diaspora or Nigerian diaspora is also too small. Like it sounds interesting. Like we looked at it as, something that a market that opened up for us. It was our Nigerian parents paying Naira and then realizing that they are not really in Nigeria. When we started asking them questions, and then they're like, no, I'm in Essex. So you're in Essex. Why are you not paying pounds? Huh? And so like that's how we built that business. But like when we look at the entire market, that in the UK, North America is probably where the largest number of Nigerians are, is not large enough. So I think that the huge opportunity, and something that we started exploring recently, is that you want to, one of the biggest platforms, Edtech platforms in the UK is Atom Learning, was created by Indians, but it's completely British. Yeah, you can't see, there's no Indians anywhere. So the Indians built it, but for the British market. So it's very core British. And so I think that's how to build things that go global, right? Is that you cannot build for a market. You can't build for Norway and be Nigerian. There are not enough Nigerians in Norway, first of all. And then second of all, the thing that will scale across Norway is a Norwegian product. So you need to kind of adapt into different environments that way.
Thank you so much for that breakdown, Boye. Please, let's give the panelists a round of applause while I move to Dami, Ogun, Tunde. Thank you for being here. So still talking about building, right? You're a builder. You've built learning initiatives for both Nestle, the Lagos State government, and I think that's a rare bridge, basically, because this is private sector and we're talking, government as well. What does scaling through institutional and government partnerships teach founders, teach everyone in this room, especially when you look at it from a direct-to-consumer perspective? Yeah.
That's a great question. First of all, I'm so sorry for my lateness. I apologize. Great to be here. Incredible thoughts shared so far. With respect to partnering with institutions and government parastatals, I think the major takeaways for businesses, especially education-aligned types of offerings, will be, number one, credibility. Now there's that level of personalized engagement that B2C conversations sort of generate when you're engaging a customer directly. And whilst it keeps you agile and you're able to understand the profile and the persona of a particular customer, by the time you begin to interact with an institution, there is a level of credibility that it gives to you that a B2C may not be able to afford you. Now, for Hardy Business School, where we have created professional development courses, both at the B2C level and then at the B2B level as well, with organizations and governmental parastatals, we see the stark difference in what both of them leverage and give to us. Whilst there is a lot of penetration with B2C, there's a lot of credibility with the B2B and governmental partnerships. There's that credibility. Another thing it gives to you also is scale. Now, of course, we all are aware of the timeline it takes to collaborate effectively with an institution or with the government, the payment cycles. It's not the most quote-unquote quick turnaround time. And so that takes you a lot of stakeholder management. It improves your latitude to interact with all kinds of stakeholders within the value chain of decision making. And it just broadens your capacity as an organization. And then it gives you a level of scale that, a B2C one-on-one type of engagement may not also be able to afford you. Because by the time you're dealing with a telco that has access to millions of users, the moment you become a learning and development partner for that telco, that big organization in a particular industry, you are able to then penetrate a major sector just by partnering with one big player in there. And that's some advantage that a B2C engagement over several years may not be able to afford you. So there's the credibility, there's the scale, and of course there's the revenue part as well. Because B2C, the money comes in trickles here and there. But with these big players, there is that quote-unquote major heavy revenue generating side. So for enrollment, adoption, B2C, it's a strong line to pursue, but for scale, for credibility, and for some strong revenue generating capacity, there's the advantage that institutional partnerships bring to Edtech solutions.
Okay. Fantastic. So with HARD, a lot of things you've said now, speaks to leadership and capability development.
Yeah.
How does this translate to the offerings at HARD? Are these some of the things that leaders, get, especially people that want to cross or, move from one sector to the other or scale, just like you've mentioned?
Absolutely. So one of our major flagship products is the Business Leadership Executive Program. In the last about 18 months, we've been able to train almost 400 top executives across major industries. Now, one of the things we observed was the fact that each of our cohorts are very demographically distributed. That is, we have a very wide spread of industry representation to oil and gas, energy, construction, literally the entire gamut represented in one class. And that's because the quality of what is taught is very industry aligned, but not industry specific. What I mean by that is we get specific experts across various industries who have done it, who have built things, who have scaled organizations to be facilitators. So it's not just theoretical and academic. So they come on these platforms, they run sessions, and it's a 10-week program divided into 3 core modules. There is the people management side of things, there is a product innovation side, and then there is the business management side. There is no kind of business field, there's no kind of industry built in that you will not require these 3 types of skills. You need people management skills, you need product innovation skills, and then you need business management skills. And so 10 courses across 10 weeks facilitated by some of the smartest and expert, minds across various industries that they have built, but the kinds of things they are sharing are adaptable to whatever context any of the cohort member is in. And so what we find is at the highest level of leadership, there is a lot of transferability. You may have cut your teeth in FMCG, but you are able to transfer the skills that you have grown over there into another domain, because at the highest level of leadership, people management is the core of what you're doing. And so whilst the technical bits, at the lower level of operational dynamics are distinct across industries, at the higher level, as you begin to go beyond technical skills to people management, Gloria, and things begin to, things get a lot more transferable. So by the time our executives are listening to some of these top executives, for example, the likes of the CEO of Sterling Bank is one of our facilitators, when he's sharing from his experience there, these are things that can be distilled and adapted to whatever context that any of the participants are currently in their own context. And so that's the beauty of the kind of training that we offer for the senior executives, and of course we have other types of solutions for entry-level professionals as well. But it's all about giving you that industry edge through a very insightful executive education.
I completely agree, because I, for one, in my career have danced around different sectors,
Yeah.
right? And so I understand what it means to develop leadership capabilities that are transferable in different places. So I'll just say well done on that.
Thank you.
While I go back to the lady on the panel, right? So I'm just going to get into the women question now. You're deeply committed to access for women and undeserved communities. As Edtech scales for growth and revenue, how do we ensure it scales for them and not past them? I don't know if I can add one more question to this, so you can just take it together. We also know that African Edtech raises a fraction of what the US, raises. What strings come attached when these monies come here? So while you're talking about how, women can access some of the things that we've discussed, just also let us know what you think about how the funding can also be made accessible to these women as well.
So, I'll start with the second question and kind of land on the first one. When it comes to funding, the person that's funding is the one that's going to almost dictate where and how that funding is going to be applied. It isn't always a blank, in fact, it isn't a blank check. And what we're finding in the markets these days is that a lot of people who are funding towards specific programs. And in those programs, they're going to tell you, we want to make sure that this ALX program that we're funding reaches 70% of women. That already starts to solve for your access problem, because then and that's something you can do even on your own without funding, making those kind of metrics something that is part of your success metrics as opposed to something that's incidental. So you know that, okay, these are the issues that are facing some of these programs. Women usually don't want to go take these programs, especially sometimes some serious, very deep tech programs, because they feel like it might be too much, or they're overwhelmed, or they have other familiar things that keep them away or don't allow them to persist in the program. So if you make 70% women taking the program, or 60% or 50% women taking the program part of your success metrics, it's something that you have to solve for. So you're making it part of the problem. You're including it as something that you have to solve for, as opposed to just making it an incidental thing. And in terms of funding, so like I was saying with funding, people will tell you 70% women these days, displaced, people who are in displaced communities, refugees and so forth, that's where they want to make sure that their funding is inclusive of, in order to meet global ESG requirements. So that's also something that affects us, and also something that should inspire us to move in that line, because at the end of the day, it also benefits us as well, so that we make sure that we're including the entire population as opposed to just excluding a few people.
Fantastic. What's the one partnership structure you've genuinely seen work for cross-border expansion that founders can apply, whether they're men or women? What's the partnership structure you think that men or women can apply? Yeah.
Okay. I think it would be going with a midwife. That's what I would call it. A midwife partnership would be one where, Kelechi touched on it a little bit. So a successful version of that partnership would be one where you're able to actually speak to someone who wants to achieve some of the same things that you might want to achieve. Maybe the person already is, let's talk about Nigeria. Maybe the person is trying to reach Lekki and you're already in Lekki, and they are somewhere else and you're trying to get somewhere else, and then you're able to join forces and midwife with each other into those two different places that you're going to. That's a successful partnership, because that way you're able to minimize your costs, you're able to minimize a lot of the regulatory compliances that you have, because you have a technical partner or any kind of partner that you're going with. That is an example of a partnership that can be useful.
Thank you very much. I think that one of the main things that has come out very strongly here is that African edtechs and African tech businesses need to do more partnership programs. They need to look at how partnerships can help them, grow their businesses, leverage their partnership connections to grow at scale. One of the things that came out very strongly here as well was the revenue conversation part. So a lot of people are talking about partnerships and funding, but I think when Boye was speaking, he mentioned revenue, right? These are some of the things that funders look out for when they want to invest. So how is this going to make money at scale? Founders need to look at this as well. So Kelechi, how does affordable tools like Genius Box and the offline RoboLearn help you reach learners with regards to price. So I think what this question is trying to say here is, how do affordable tools like GeniusBox and offline RoboLearn help you reach learners who are struggling with, pricing, internet dependency, and stuff like that?
In answering this question, I'm going to kind of like tiptoe into what Boye said about why edtechs are struggling in terms of raising VC funding. And I'll now fall back to GeniusBox and RoboLearn like you asked. So we're building, most of the edtechs, 90% of edtechs, and this is my opinion, we're still building for a very small market. We're still building for the market that looks like us, right? So this is a 10 to 20 million market. And so when Boye said, like, 4 million parents, that's just maybe the parents, not the parents that can actually pay, right? So to build a global, a unicorn or a VC-friendly edtech, you need to be thinking about a 50 to 100 million market. So let me do the numbers for you. If you have a product of 200 naira per month and a 100 million market size, is paying you that 200 million per month. That's a $2 billion. That's 2 billion naira, right? That is attractive to VC. But Boye also said that they want to see this market size story, right? However, it's not only the market size story they want to see. They want to see how this market you've told us about, how are you taking this market week on week, and how is the revenue showing? So before, you could tell them the story about the market, and they'll say, okay, collect this 50K check. Now VCs, okay, it's a 10 million size market. Okay, so how is the market adopting this your product? How many did you onboard last week? How much did they pay before the check comes out? So let's leave that. So what we have tried to do at Nigerians is, since we serve this middle class and upper class market, we're thinking, how can we reach the lower class market? How can we reach the 50 to 100 million market size? That's more affordable. So RoboLearn, we started RoboLearn with our workbook. It's a robotics workbook, but it's QR linked and it's a physical document, right? So learners can open it up, scan the QR, open a Google Doc, which is free, right? And access extra content, right? Because accessibility and affordability are two key areas that you need to use to scale in edtech. How easily can I open this your product, and how affordable is it, right? Then the second thing again for GeniusBox is packaging. Our packaging is very cheap. Our box is that box itself is a 2K box. Our parts in the robotics kit are locally sourced. And another thing again is that QR. You open the box, the QR under. You scan the QR, it opens all the instructions. We didn't have to go and build any platform or any web page for you to start accessing the resources, because that will cost us more money, and we'll have to now put that cost on the product. So GeniusBox is our cheapest box is a 70 gig box. So that's doable for a parent in Yaba. That's doable for maybe a parent in Leary or, or Lekki, as Boye said. You get so accessibility and affordability are important for us. RoboLearn is just 30K, just a 30K workbook, right? So now let's talk about RoboLearn Digital, right? It's a digital platform, but another thing we've done is offline. It works offline. We're able to pull that off very quickly. Turn off your data, you're still learning. Another thing that we did again is that we don't want, Africans don't necessarily like subscriptions. They don't like that tie down. So we said top up credits, buy robo credits, right? So you can buy robo credits from like 500 naira, 2K, 1K. So what we are trying to do is build products and services for the people that look like us, and also build products and services for the people who don't necessarily have the liquidity, so that that access and quality can get to them. So quality and access. If you're going to do only access and your product is not good, nobody's going to buy. But you do access and you give them rich quality that they necessarily didn't have access to. And we've been able to monetize both products. So it tells us that we're doing something right. Yeah.
Great. I think that with what you've described, everybody is welcome. And I think I'll just wrap up this panel with a question to Boye. And it's a media question. So with all these razzmatazz and everything going on in the edtech space, in the funding space, does global media attention actually help you scale and raise, or is it vanity? Just tell us the truth. What genuinely moves the needle, so that other builders that are here as well can know, what the real deal is. Thank you.
Okay. I was venture partner at Founders Factory Africa. We had $100 million to give African founders And some of the things that I learned in that experience showed me, and I think it was after that period, the entire fund itself got dissolved. And then the VC ecosystem has shifted to what Kelechi said is no longer about how fancy the idea is or how fancy the market is, to what you are actually doing clear. In fact, I think VCs are PE now. They are now private equity. They are now saying, yeah, so how much are you making, you know? And they are now lowering your valuation. I think at that time, I think ULESIN raised at 80x their valuation, their actual revenue. They were doing $60,000 every month. And then they raised $15 million at a valuation that was 80 times, like 60,000 times 12. You can't do that now. At least not from Africa. I think you can do that from Silicon Valley still. But what that just means for the Edtech founder, I think that's the question, is this is not we're no longer competing with whose story came out in TechAbout first or TechCrunch first. We are competing in who has built two things. One, a recurring business model, a recurring revenue model that you can see month-on-month growth. And by the way, that's hard. Like people make money, you know, I know people make money because they buy new things. But it doesn't mean that they make money in February more than January, in March more than February, and so on and so forth, and that you can bake in an actual growth rate. But a growth rate is the minimum requirement for raising any money. It's literally the minimum, because what you are buying is the future, where you are not flat. You're not exactly where you are. There's net value of money, time value of money. And so essentially you have to have traction. I think that's the word. So traction is the new media, new press. In fact, you don't even have to say it. You just have to be it. It will say itself, literally. Like if I have enough money, because of how much money I'm making, let's say I'm making enough money in Lekki now. In Lekki alone, I'm using Lekki. But like I say, in Lekki alone, I'm making this much money. That money can come out of my purse as a billboard without me doing any, because it's actually functionally necessary for me to do that. You see what I mean? And so people will know that, okay, these guys have money. You see what I mean? And so I think that's where we are now. You have to have money. You have to grow money. You have to have users. You have to grow users. And you have to grow usage rates. And I say, what is growth? Because funding is a momentum game. It's that you're growing, let me not lose out. If I don't put money now, in 2 years' time, I would have missed out. I know many people felt like that for LEM5, for example. It's like, LEM5? It's not just yesterday that So it's a growth story, and that growth story is in traction, not in the stories or the press and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, 1, 2, 3, and okay, 4, and that's it. Very quickly. Let's just take it very quickly before we leave. Okay, come, you can. Do you want to come forward, or should we give them the mic there?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your presentation, and I'm glad to see you guys here very well. I appreciate what you're doing. Talking about collaboration between Edtech, I don't know, how would it run when it seems like you're doing similar things and it won't come to the point of conflict of you competing for my customer, although of course there may be different geographies. But for example, you're doing tutoring, I don't know. Maybe you will say, okay, one aspect of tutoring. But I know that every founder has a vision of expanding. So if I collaborate with you on the path that I'm not yet there, but I feel like in the next few years, I hope to get into that area. I don't know how that's going to work. Then, Mr. Adame, I read your article on LinkedIn talking about Edtech and talking about patience capital. I don't know. And one of the reasons why Edtech would not get the funding like fintech, because like Mr. since said, the time to turnover is not short. So I'm now coming to the case of, so what should we do now? Should we seek funding, or let's just sweat it out? See, one day, we'll get on track. I don't know.
Okay, so should I go for the, okay. Good question, thank you for that question. Well, the feedback that I shared on LinkedIn is a direct reflection of what I'd seen within the space regarding the expectations that VCs and PE firms have of Edtech solutions, independent of the kind of solution that they're building. You know, just like Boye had mentioned, traction is the name of the game. You have to show growth, you have to show numbers, not just numbers in enrollment, not just vanity metrics, but actual sale. And that perhaps may not be reflective of the kind of solution that you are offering, because, for example, when we started out, we were offering micro courses to quote-unquote entry-level folks. Now, entry-level folks don't have disposable income to pay for the micro courses that we were offering. Now, were we getting enrollment? Absolutely, we were getting enrollment in the thousands. Within months, we had gotten 30,000, learners. But we definitely had to reduce our cost for the courses from a particular amount to a particular amount till we made it absolutely free for them to come in. And then you started hearing things around freemium, which is typically the way to quote-unquote break into the market as an Edtech solution that is not so well known. So at the end of the day, you're building out a lot of quote-unquote metrics, enrollment, that you really can't provide the revenue to back up at the end of the day. And that's why some type of fund, some type of, should I say, charitable funds might need to start being carefully attached and deployed for educational initiatives. All right. For example, we were beneficiaries, I think greatly as well, of the Mastercard Foundation Accelerator Program, which was a funding to Edtech solutions that were evaluated based on their own merit, not too, quote unquote, not too hung up on the traction conversation, but much more on the impact conversation. By the time you look at the landscape in Nigeria and the number of out-of-school children, the number of people leaving universities without the quality skill set and employability skills to get involved, and to be able to compete with their global counterparts in the job market, you begin to realize that if we are really building for this particular market, we can't also be expecting the funding to come from this particular market in terms of the revenue generation. And so there has to be a thinking, a very high-level institutional thinking that stimulates the growth of Edtech solutions without placing too much of an instant burden for revenue generation off the bat. That kind of conversation needs to happen at the highest level of governmental policy making and perhaps global, quote-unquote, foundations as well. Just like we have the likes of Mastercard Foundation that has done that. We need to have that replicated across multiple domains, especially within the Edtech space, from K-12 to SaaS, to tutoring, to professional development, different types of Edtech solutions. They need that kind of stimulus in order to build for the long term. So that's sort of where I'm coming from, that there needs to be patient capital in a patient sector, because education is a very patient sector, and the capital needs to mirror that profile.
Precious, can I answer his partnership question? Okay. So I think I can answer your question because I've been able to close out some key partnerships with Nigerians. I've closed out one with ALX. I've closed out with FlexiSAF. But I don't think we've done anything yet. I'm still waiting for us to do something. So a partnership, like I said, is a two-way thing. So let me give you an example. At Nigerians, I'm looking for parents. I'm looking for schools, right? I have teachers. I have a platform. So if you come to me for a partnership, the first thing I'm asking is, can you give me parents? Can you give me schools? If you're looking for teachers, I can give you teachers. I also have my own existing schools that I can also, I still need more schools, right? So it has to be, it's a transaction. And the thing is that if we're competitors, we don't necessarily have to partner. It's not a must. So we don't have to take partnership as a must. For example, Aderonke is my friend, right? She runs Brint. I'm running Nigerians. We haven't done any partnerships yet, but we're friends. We talk. We can talk about the market and everything because I haven't still spotted how the partnership is going to happen. She's looking for parents, I'm looking for parents. Do you understand? You know, then maybe if somebody does financing for schools and I do robotics for schools, okay, I can give you my schools to finance, you can give me your schools for robotics. Partnership made in heaven. So the two most important things is it's a give and take, and it's not a must that we must partner if we are competitors. We can be guys. Do you get it?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The second question, go ahead. We have to move very quickly because of time.
Yes, please. So this question will be going to Mr. Kelechi. I would just like to know how you started with your instructors and how you're doing it currently. More like the back end of how you validated them or whether you trained them or something. I just want to know how these things come about, because this thing is based on trust and there are some advantage and disadvantage to these things and all of that.
He wants to know your secret formula. That's a simple question there.
And I also want to ask Mr. Boye this question. When it comes to sponsorship and partnership, is there a man-no-man thing in this thing, or it is based on your achievement, or what exactly will make MasterCard say yes to you? That's basically the question.
Sorry, let me just rephrase. I think he wants to know where to find the money.
It's a real question. That question is, MasterCard has given cohorts of 10 companies every year for 3 years straight, and fourth one is coming now. And I think the questions, and Dami will know these questions, the questions that they ask are questions around, I think these are the things that make people notice the difference. And I remember when I spoke with Morayo. When I spoke to Morayo, I didn't know that she was a MasterCard fellow, but I heard her talk, and it occurred to me that this person should be someone that I should back, or somebody should back her. And then she said, well, MasterCard has already backed her. So, okay. So what did I find in what she said? Is that there's a very strong thesis about your take on education. Like what is a problem that nobody has truly solved in that space, that you have figured out a way to solve it, right? I remember Choma as well, where she broke things down to micro payments, micro learning, right? Micro payments and micro learning, they seem obvious now, but she actually, communicated it in a way that you could tell that that's a unique solution to a unique problem that still currently exists. You see what I mean? And so that's one thing. That's strong belief in your way of doing things, right? It's like saying, somebody coming and saying, all these tablet things are wrong. Everybody needs to have a textbook. And then gives you very proper data, lived experiences, and examples of why that's actually the case, right? So that's one thing that makes a difference. And then second thing is, again, traction. I know that there was not too much emphasis on traction, but I don't think anybody entered with zero traction. I can't remember anybody that did not validate. So it's like, I have a thesis, I have an hypothesis about something, and I have proven it. In fact, kind of the places that people prove these things are very far away places. Like places in Kaduna, in Kano, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that children are, do you know what I mean? So if you go to the IDP camp and you actually prove something that's different about IDP students, that's different from city students, and you tell us, or you tell MasterCard that that's actually what we need to do, I think that that's also very important. The third was the learning science of it. Yeah. It's like, there's an academic theory, some of them are already validated in the past. Like in Gradley is influenced very strongly by Benjamin Bloom's theory of 2 sigma. The 2 sigma effect states that if you give an average child one-on-one tutoring with mastery learning techniques in how you deliver that tutoring, the average child will operate as though it was a top in class. It will literally operate at top 98th percentile. And so we are using technology to prove that every day. So I think that the learning science is very, very important. Like you understand, you're a subject matter expert of this thing. You're not just talking from your head. You talk to some professor or read some white papers about what it is that is. Do you get what I mean? And I think eventually everything comes down to how you present it, like clarity of your thoughts. So I've seen people who actually have really great ideas. It's like maybe, for example, you're like, gaming is the future. And I ask you, why? You're like, yeah, games, and then you struggle to say why, and I'm like, gaming is the future. That's a very strong, nice point to start, but everything else now breaks down, and I can't back you for that. Like, I don't know how to back you. So that's the answer. I hope that helps.
So to answer your question about instructors, I'll try to keep it very, actually I don't tell you all my secrets. So we have two types of instructors in Nigerians. We have the ones who do, the tutors who do subject tutoring, maths, English. There are hundreds, almost 1,000 of them, you know. And we now have the robotics tutors, about 60 to 70% of them who go to schools, right? For the subject tutors on our platform, it's more of capturing as much information as you can capture from them quickly by their registration process. The first registration process is just basic, but the second one goes a bit deep down where we get to know you, your credentials, and even your identification, right? Then, initially when we started, before we would onboard you and send it to a parent, we want to have a conversation with you, like a video call. But when you have 200, 300 people, how many video calls can you have? You know, so you have to make sure that your sign-up process gives you enough information about the person that you want to send to go tutor a child, right? You have to figure it out and crack it. Another thing again is that when you have a body of instructors or tutors like this, you don't stay away from them, right? You have to find ways to, at intervals, keep on communicating with them and know what they're feeling, know what the pulse is like, know how they're experiencing your platform. Master classes, sessions, town halls. We even do town halls. Sometimes we do tutors town hall, just to know what are these people feeling. On the robotics side, you know, it's a little bit more intimate with them. We have to regularly meet with them, you know, within a term. We have to meet with them frequently via Zoom, of course, because nobody's going to come and start having physical meetings. That's a lot of transport and everything, you know, and understand where they're coming from. And you also have to be flexible, right? You have to be flexible with them. They will have needs. They will complain when the process is not so sweet for them. You have to make them happy. That is just it. Trust, you know, people giving you quality. It's about making the process easy for them. We have people who work with us. They work with multiple companies. I don't have a problem with that. But when I call you, they come. Because when we call them and they come, it's because they know that we treat them right. So these are human beings, they're not robots. If you have people working for you and you just feel like, pass message, do this, do that, you see that after a while the system starts to break, quality starts to reduce, people start to drop out, people start to make comments. But when you constantly communicate with them, you know, and make sure that they are happy, the system moves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelechi. Let's have the third question.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So, my name is Jason. I'm the founder of JPEX Academy. So, before I ask my question, I just want to say a story that happened last year. So, I single-handedly gathered a group of students last year in November to look into major problems we're facing in our local community. For example, these problems, creating a platform where students, mostly undergraduate students, can connect with companies that provide online jobs to them. Because you see, most undergraduate students, they don't have feeding money, or they are looking for ways to, make money while in school. And that was one of the problems. And also solving the issue of harmful substances, that's CO2, carbon dioxide coming out from commercial buses and vehicles. So these are just the problems we look about. So the main problem was lack of focus. So we just finished secondary school, and some of them are actually still in secondary school. The main problem was lack of focus. The Nigerian educational system will not give us time to be innovative and look at innovative solutions. Monday to Friday, come to school, maybe cultural day, career day. It doesn't even just for one day. So my question is that what is one policy you make if you had the power or a magic wand that will express the innovative ability in us as students? Yeah, that's my question.
So I'll take a stab at it. I wrote an article that I think, journalists took and it became a real thing. And I called it the 10-decade theory. And I'll just break it down. And that's my own belief that that's what we need to do in this country right now. The biggest thing to focus on in the first 10 years of a child's life is literacy, numeracy, reading literacy. If everybody is literate at age 10, by the way, only 1 in 10 people are literate at age 10, and some people are not literate even when they're 20, and goes on like that. So that's something to arrest. And the only institution that can arrest it is government. No Edtech solution is going to solve basic education in this country. That's fact. Now, when you graduate from being 10-year-old and you're going from 10 to 15, that's secondary school age, right? I think that we're focusing too much on subject matter and things like that. Like you must know geography You must know technical drawing. I think that the most important things are what you call 21st century skills. So we call them the 4 C's. So one is communication, collaboration, creativity. What's the 4th one? Critical thinking. Actually, that's supposed to be number 1, right? And so your goal in that 5 years should be about using subject matter to create opportunities for those skills to. So, for example, I know a homeschooling parent who every Friday her children do presentations to her. Every Friday. That discipline of presenting in PowerPoint presentation about what you've learned all through the week is enough learning, actually. That's school. That's school. So it's not about preparing for an exam. That's not necessarily school. I think Godwin said a lot about that. So just trying to read. For example, I remember very well, like in fine art, and so you read a lot of history, and you're trying to remember. So it's just memory. I've forgotten everything now. Every theory about fine art, I've forgotten. Only the drawing itself. So I think that that's what you should do in secondary school, or what we call secondary school. It doesn't matter what you call it. What I call it is, the period for 21st century skills. And in the last period, what we call university, polytechnic, and I call that phase the economic specialization phase. That's where you should actually start doing something in the industry. If you are going to study zoology, I don't understand how that matters. Like, that's something that we're still struggling with in Nigeria. China has scrapped over 1,200 courses in the entire curriculum. There's no reason to study botany. There's no reason, I'm telling you, unless you want to be an academic. Unless you literally want to be an academic. The only way, in fact, if you start botany, you must do PhD. Don't stop, because there's no point. Like, why are you coming out of botany to come and do what? What skill did you now get? So I think economic specialization says that you should be preparing to play a role in the economy in 5 years. That's it. If that role is as a plumber, as an entrepreneur, as a carpenter, whatever it is, that's what that period should be about. So we need to reform the university system to allow people to develop the skills that makes them generate income and move up the economic ladder. So that's my policy if I'm Minister of Education tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Boye. Beautifully answered. And we have our final question.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is John, founder of Clarify. I'm also an alumni of ALX. So very happy to see you. Thank you. Yeah. So my question is regarding AI and Edtech. So I don't know if any of us saw the video about someone who asked ChatGPT to read Psalm 23 in Yoruba, and it was like saying some crazy, like the phonetics wasn't so good, right? So like we all know that AI has a lot of possibilities for us in this current day and age. But I've been researching on most of the models and everything for the past few years, and I realized that most of them have been trained in English. And we have so many languages in our communities, in our different communities. And when we are trying to build solutions that integrate to different local communities, how do we ensure that there is room for those communities, especially those that don't know how to speak English? And also, how do we ensure that we don't miss out on the great opportunities that AI brings in this day and age? Thank you.
Let me stop that one. So if I was Minister of Education, the one I would do is Nigerian schools, everybody must use Nigerian Edtech solutions. No foreign, whether you're doing software or hardware, use a Nigerian Edtech platform. That's what my policy would be, and you'll be surprised at what will happen. What you're saying about AI, like I'll take it back to that 100 million market, right? We need to build for the kids in Ikoyi, and we need to build for the kids in Mushi, right? And when I'm talking about the kids in Mushi, I'm talking about the kids who don't speak good English, that understand Yoruba. I believe any AI platform that you want to deliver in EdTech and build a massive company, vernacular, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, that your AI must be able to conducively deliver these languages to that bottom of the pyramid, right? And the local models, I know about GPT, the company that was acquired by Blue Chip. So I think they've cracked that. So that's another strategic partnership. That how can I plug in GPT to be able to get, but a lot of people are building things, but basically AI will play a major role, but the models have to be trained for us. It's not just to build a solution, you have to train that solution. That solution must be fed African data. Secondly, if you're building a learning solution or a teaching solution, it's not just about feeding it with the language or feeding it with the curriculum and the documents. You have to train it on actual human data. So, for example, example, Kemi is like an experienced teacher. I don't know if you know Kemi. She's like top notch. Kemi now should, if you want your solution to deliver A+, you might need to work with Kemi to train that tutor, that AI model. She needs to train it. So she shares her notes. She shares how she would solve the problem. She shares how she will mark, and the AI is learning it. So that when that AI starts to deliver, it's almost as good as 100%. That's what I've learned. Yeah.
All right, so we've come to the end of this panel. Title of the panel again is Scaling African EdTech Beyond Borders, and I believe our panelists from Ruby to Kelechi to Boye and Dami have done justice to this session. Thank you very much for having us.